Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to WVOF Sports Channel. This is our third stream in 3 days. Switching it up a little bit here today as we are going to do live stream the NFL Draft, a great tradition started by Colin O'Callaghan, an alumni here at Fairfield University, who was the sports director here at WVOF. Happy to be following in his footsteps. I'm Andrew Jameson alongside Colin Lynch. Big Mike also here joining me for some Patriots analysis. We got Patriots and Jets fans. I'm just here for the ride and going, as they say. It's going to be a great evening, fellas. What's our biggest question heading into the draft?
Biggest question for me with New England is, what are they going to do at 3? What will they do? Will it be Drake May? Will it be Jaden Daniels if the Commanders don't take him? Will it be a Marvin Harrison pick? In my mock draft that I did a few weeks ago, I liked the pickup of Marvin Harrison just for the fact that the talent at receiver is top, in my opinion, very top heavy. But again, a very depth-filled receiver core right here. At the end of the day, if New England can hit it right, they can hit it right. They don't got really any bad picks right now. I'll pass it over to Colin to talk about the Jets.
Yeah, Colin, Jets fan. You have had a loaded off season, to say the least. What are you expecting for? What are your goals from this draft as a Jets fan?
So, basically over the free agency, we did do a very good job. We did buff up the O-line completely. We got, although we did release Mekhi Becton, who's been injury prone for many years. After his impressive rookie year, he sort of fell off, had multiple knee injuries. We did get back Morgan Moses in the offseason from the Ravens, signed John Simpson, put him at left guard. We'll have Elijah Vera-Tucker at right guard. Joe Tipman, second year, he'll be at center, and we'll have Tyron Smith from the Cowboys at left tackle. Although he is injury prone, as a Jets fan, I'm looking to either snag Bowers at 10, or if not, we'll trade back maybe to 13 or 15 and snag a lineman there. But other than being a Jets fan, what I'm mostly excited about is seeing if there is a trade at 3 and 6 with the Patriots and the Giants. I know Mike is a Patriots fan. Like, Mike, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, from what I've read, the Giants are very much one of those teams that are being very aggressive to go for that number 3 pick. The Vikings also are in that mix as well, trying to go for the number 3, really wanting a quarterback like a Drake May. Obviously, J.J. McCarthy in recent weeks has been a very much hyped prospect to go at 3 if a trade happens. As a New England fan, and from what I'm hearing from New England sources, they are not going to move unless it's a really large haul. A team like the Vikings do have 2 first-round picks this year, but I don't think that's going to be enough. It would need to be either more picks, more of these earlier picks this year, or more firsts in the next couple years, or even just another position player to add to the team, to add to New England's depth and try to bolster a team that is very much lacking a lot of skill positions, especially at receiver. Tight end, you still have Hunter Henry, re-signing him in the offseason. But I just think receiver and quarterback are the biggest 2 things that New England needs to hit in these first 2 rounds before they can address other things like the offensive line, which was also, like the Jets, another injury-riddled team last year. Not having a lot of consistency on a starting offensive line. If you can have that, if you can get a good receiver, whether it be at 3, whether you even potentially trade back into the first round, or whether you use your second round pick to go get a receiver, like potentially a Keon Mitchell from Florida State. If maybe an Adonai Mitchell from Texas falls out of the first round, maybe see if you can go get one of them there.
So how this is going to work is we're going to give the pick. What happens? Breakdown, kind of just like a draft, kind of what to expect. I know, at least for the Bears' sake, I think we all can agree that Caleb Williams is going to go first overall. Then I think number 2, Jaden Daniels, reports have seemed to favor that Commanders will likely be taking Jaden Daniels, I think, over Drake May. So ironically, Drake May's stock has kind of declined, whereas J.J. McCarthy's has skyrocketed over the course of the last month. Where do you Mike, I mean, as a Patriots fan, Patriots obviously being one of the teams heavily linked to J.J. McCarthy, do you think should the Patriots draft J.J. McCarthy?
I'm going to say with complete certainty, with a first-round pick at pick 3, no. J.J. McCarthy, yeah, he had a good run to win the championship in the national championship last year with Michigan, but I am not taking him at 3. At the end of the day, Drake May, Jane Daniels, in my opinion, are better. They have more, I think, have more of a skill set, and some things I've seen to me suggest that J.J. McCarthy could be like another Mac Jones type, a guy who's much more of a pocket passer, has a little bit better athleticism than Mac Jones, but I would not take him with 3.
Now, Jets fan, Zach Wilson, he just got traded to the Broncos. A lot of people are comparing J.J. McCarthy to Zach Wilson, I feel like, from the combine performances. You remember that one beautiful throw by Zach Wilson, right?
Yeah.
As a Jets fan, I mean, I know you're not necessarily focused on J.J. McCarthy because you have your quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, but what are your thoughts on him and his game?
I mean, he is a winner, that is for sure. Undefeated season, whatnot. He is a talent, but for pick 3, like, regardless, Patriots will not. I don't think for certainty Patriots will go at 3. Like, this is the first non-Belichick draft in however long it's been. So I do think J.J. McCarthy is a good quarterback, but inside the top 10, maybe not. Maybe the Vikings might snag him, like, around past pick 10 and wherever they are at. The Vikings.
So the Vikings, as of right now, are only at pick 10, I want to say. I think the Jets are 11, right? Jets are 10. Vikings are 11.
Yeah.
Okay. Every mock draft I have seen has seen the Vikings trade up either in the Chargers spot or the Patriots spot to land a potential J.J. McCarthy or Drake May. You know, the Vikings obviously just losing Kirk Cousins to Atlanta. Justin Jefferson's 5th year is coming up. He wants a win now mode, and, you know, kind of restless, I think, is the state of Minnesota football right now as we are getting underway. But I guess one last thing on J.J. McCarthy before Roger Goodell comes out to booze, as he does every year. Where do you think McCarthy ends up, Mike?
I think if I'm Minnesota, I don't think J.J. McCarthy will go high unless there's a trade. I wouldn't be surprised if he falls all the way 11. Another quarterback, I wouldn't be surprised, also gets taken in the top half. Recent reports, Michael Penix Jr. Recent report came out today, I saw on Bleacher Report, that said he may not make it past the Raiders pick at 13.
The Raiders were linked to, I believe, we're linked to Michael Penix heavily at one point. However, it is a QB heavy class with the likes of Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May. I'll even throw Bo Nix, and definitely all high in the first round as Roger Goodell is going to get underway. And this first pick, the lead up always takes forever, I feel like, and then kind of speeds up in that regard. So we don't know how long we're going to be here. Nonetheless, we're going to be staying through the whole thing, as there are so many guest speakers now, bro. Detroit really packed the house. Amon-Ra St. Brown in the house, just got paid. The big man, Lions coming off of an NFC championship appearance. The stock in the Detroit Lions is high. They're playing good, and they look good.
Yeah.
I know you're a Jets fan. You have the new uniforms. What are your thoughts on those?
I do like them. I was not a fan of the old ones. Those are from, like, the start in the Sam Darnold era, and then it was downhill from there. I do miss the ones from the Revis era, but I do like the throwbacks. Reminds me of the Joe Klecko era, the New York Stock Exchange times during the 70s.
But before we get off the stage, I need to hear one thing. Cherry God.
No better way to plug a quarterback. Wonder if he's even in attendance.
What's up, Detroit? Let's go, baby.
And
Oh, he is there. Okay, I was gonna say you can't plug that and not have the quarterback present.
Let's turn up tonight, baby. Let's get it.
Detroit is on the map. They have put themselves on the map, and it is a place now where a lot of NFL players want to play. Dan Campbell has a good thing going, and it's rooted in history as Barry Sanders is taking the podium now.
Thank you for showing the world how we do it here in Detroit. Great job, guys.
If there's one other team I can root for in the NFL, it is the Detroit Lions. After last season, the grit they had last season, and the fact that they got that far in the playoffs playing the 49ers, I am excited to see what this Detroit team has to offer.
And Roger Goodell getting booed once again. But going back to Detroit, they have had made a lot of noise this offseason, both in free agency and big extensions. As we just mentioned, Amon-Ra St. Brown just got extended 4 years, $120 million. Penei Sewell also got paid big time, largest contract for an offensive lineman in NFL history.
Even to go outside of Detroit, just within the past 20 minutes, Rappaport reporting the extension of A.J. Brown, the receiver for Philly.
Yeah, no, Philly definitely adds on, securing their wide receiver core. First Devontae Smith, now A.J. Brown. Ironically, A.J. Brown was traded on draft day in 2022. Reports have come out that T. Higgins requested a trade, and Brendan Ayuk is being considered in trade talks. I'm going to ask you a question. You don't have to give me a definitive answer, but which one do you think is more likely to be traded, Colin?
I think I definitely think T. Higgins. Personally, I think T. Higgins is gonna go. Not definitely. It's been long. He's been whining out for a while now. You already have Jamar at your number one. The Bengals do have a mid-round pick at 18. They could go, if they do trade T. Higgins, they could go with someone at 18, could be aggressive. But I do think, personally, I think T. Higgins is out.
Now, speaking of the draft, we are underway. The Bears are on the clock. The Bears have absolutely gone all out in what we assume to be is the first pick in Caleb Fields, going out and trading for Keenan Allen, adding DeAndre Swift in the backfield. They did something similar last year with Justin Fields when the Bears acquired DJ Moore. However, nothing like this, Mike. It appears the Bears are all in, and Caleb Williams, we think more likely than not, is all in on the Chicago Bears. That seems like a lock.
Definitely. I would be shocked if Caleb Williams doesn't get drafted one. Shocked would honestly be an understatement. It will be definitely also interesting as we get towards the bottom half of this top 10. Chicago obviously having the number 9 pick. What are they going to do at 9? Do they bolster up that offensive line? Do they go defense? Do they go for maybe a Rome Odunze if he falls all the way to 9? In my own mock draft and a lot of mock drafts, I don't know if Odunze falls to 9. I have Odunze being somewhere in that 4 to 6, maybe 7 range, depending on where a team, whether Joe Alt gets drafted somewhere in that top 5 or 6 picks. But I think, again, you will see these 3 receivers go very quickly in Neighbors, in Harrison, and in Odunze.
Now, Jets, you have – I'm not trying to make this an entire Jets thing. We have 2 Jets fans in the room. You are a more avid fan than myself, as I'm just a football watcher. I love Red Zone. That's how I watch all my sports. You have the pick right after the Bears.
Yeah.
So Mike's saying if they take Odunze, if Odunze's on the board, are you not hesitating to take him?
So that's if Bowers is on the board, the Jets, I'm sure they're going Bowers. The GM, Joe Douglas, has been talking. He does like Bowers' ability to be explosive in the pass game, and he can block. But if Odunze gets past 9, I think the Jets will go with the skill position. Joe Douglas, GM, does like explosiveness. and that'll be the number 3 on the Jets team because they did get Mike Williams in the offseason. But I think it would be a good move from the Bears if they did get Odunze at 9, because you got Keenan Allen, you got Swift, you did lose Mooney.
Yes.
You could just and Odunze, that'd be a plug and play right there. He could be better than Mooney's sure thing. And then the Bears fans definitely have to feel comfortable with Caleb Williams. They have been riddled with some terrible QB play for the longest time, and they do think this could be the guy that could get them their second championship.
And Justin Fields did get help, and he had flashes, but was never really consistent or injury riddled. You know, we mentioned them bringing in DJ Moore. However, even still with DJ Moore, Fields found himself in, I'd say, the bottom 4th in the league in a lot of major offensive statistic categories. So the Bears pulled the plug. It appears the Caleb Williams era is upon us. As we see on the screen there, 120 total touchdowns since 2021, most in college football as a whole. So this seems like all but a done deal. But I'm curious of your sake. You know, offense. We say defense wins championships, but offense is kind of what gets you. Well, gets you those points. Without points, you win. And it feels like an arms race at this point with how much teams are trying to stock up on offensive weapons and, you know, elite playmakers. So if you're in the draft room, what are you prioritizing? I know a lot of it is based off of fit. However, this is a heavily dominant offensive draft. So what are you prioritizing? Are you going over talent or fit?
In my opinion, for a lot of teams, I think, especially with a lot of the rule changes, especially with the new tackle rule, I think you definitely, a lot of teams, I think, will take offense, especially considering the depths of positions like quarterbacks, like the receivers, like the offensive line. And another position, but a position on defense, I wouldn't be surprised. A heavy run on tonight would also be the cornerback position. There are a lot of good corners out there. Yes, some of these corners are coming off of injuries. Cooper DeJean, one of them. I forget exactly the injury. I believe it's either a leg injury or it's an arm injury. But still, a very depth-filled class on the corners, on the receivers, on the quarterbacks as well. I think realistically, one position offensively in this draft class that's not as strong is the running back position. And I kind of talking before this, there's one team in this entire draft, if a running back was taken in the first round, it would be that 24th pick with Dallas. Now, obviously, with reports coming out that Dallas is linked to potentially return or bring back Ezekiel Elliott, it's unlikely, but I wouldn't be shocked if the Dallas Cowboys say, you know what, we lost Tony Pollard in the offseason. Let's go get a running back, whether it be the running back from Texas, whether it be a Blake Corum from Michigan who balled out in the playoffs. I'm very much interested to see, especially in the back half of this draft, what a lot of teams that were in the playoff last year do. Do they go get depth at certain positions they maybe struggled at? Or do they go with the best overall player? It'll be an interesting draft, and the Bears pick is now in.
A common theme within NFL, there's always one team that appears to go worst to first. Last year, case in point, the Texans, who were a laughingstock not even 2 years ago, are now an absolute powerhouse in the AFC, acquiring the likes of Stephon Diggs, Danielle Hunter. The vibes in Houston are absolutely high, to say the least. As the Bears pick is in, Roger Goodell getting booed to the stage once again. No surprises here, as Caleb Williams is a Chicago Bear. All of those Photoshops finally are a reality. Now, Colin, I know the first pick, we tend to blow things out of proportion. However, Caleb Williams is undisputedly the best quarterback in this draft. Do you think the Bears have an ability to make the playoffs?
The Bears do. I think the Bears, this will be a turnaround. The Bears are going to be hype. Caleb Williams has nothing but weapons on his side at the moment. I think as long as that line can hold up, sky's the limit for Caleb Williams at the moment. He has two great receivers at the moment. By pick 9, he could have 3. And with the Bears signing Swift too, they have him in the backfield. I think sky is the limit for Caleb Williams, and he could do some serious damage with that team.
I will say a lot of the NFC North is on the rise, so it's good. It's definitely a gritty division. We talk about the AFC North and how more often than not it's a bloodbath every year. However, the Packers are on the rise. They've had a great free agency, acquiring the likes of Josh Jacobs, Xavier McKinney. The Lions are all the momentum in the world as the future is bright. The foundation is there. Minnesota's a little bit of a question mark. However, they are known as one of the better teams in terms of developing players. So with Commanders on the clock, I think this Commanders, in my opinion at least, have less of an ability to go from worst to first. I still think there's a lot of problems in that organization that need to be fixed. There were reports going back and forth between Daniels and May. I'm with Daniels. Big Mike, whose side are you on for Commanders?
I'm gonna probably go with Daniels. I think if you're looking at a lot of the league right now in terms of the quarterback, the mobile quarterback is a very much prized possession. I mean, you're looking at some of the top quarterbacks. You look at a guy like a Josh Allen, very much a mobile quarterback who does have a cannon in the ball. You have a Lamar Jackson who is very much a mobile quarterback. Jordan Love, a young up and coming and very much improved this season for the Packers. It's to me, I think it should be Daniels. Either way, Washington and New England, if they both take quarterbacks, it's not a terrible decision whichever one you get.
Colin, are you also on the Jane Daniels train for the Commanders?
Yeah, don't get me wrong. Drake May is an incredible talent, and I think the Jane Daniels has been set in stone for a while now within the Commanders organization. They obviously knew Caleb Williams was going 1, so I think the Washington pick at 2 was the real number 1 in the draft. And then from here on, I can't wait to see what happens. I do think if Daniels does go here, there will be some action at 3, whether the Patriots trade or select him or they go receiver.
Things will definitely get spicy, especially with the Patriots pick, as there have been reports of trading of picks. I know heavily linked to New England, also Los Angeles's pick at number 5. But as of right now, the Commanders are on the clock. New England has the number 3 pick. Arizona holds the number 4 pick. Caleb Williams is off the board. Commanders, there's a lot of issues, but the heart and soul of any team is a quarterback. And what do you think? Trying to see. I don't want to do like stealing because I hate putting like expectations on a rookie. However, number 2 overall pick last year, CJ Stroud, is now one of the most trendiest and rising, honestly, superstars in the league. What are the odds you say that Jaden Daniels is not picked right now?
To me, with the reports that Daniels seems like the favorite to go in Washington, I'm gonna go with a 60-40 odds that Washington picks him. To me, Washington's kind of been feels like a very quiet team in terms of their pick. There hasn't been really a lot that I've at least heard from that's come out of the Washington camp about what they are gonna do, what they want to do. I think they've been heavily looking at both quarterbacks to see which one they like the most. Again, in talks with people I know about that love football and that have been more or covering more of these prospects, some compare Drake May to having flashes of the Josh Allen, a mobile quarterback, but does have an arm. Maybe not the biggest arm like Josh Allen, but still has an arm that can get the ball downfield. And with Jaden Daniels, to me, I see him more as that kind of, I don't want to say Lamar Jackson exactly, but he's much, I would say, closer to a Lamar Jackson or even potentially a Patrick Mahomes, but maybe not with the biggest arm. But it's going to be interesting. The pick is in Washington, and we will see what they are going to do.
Commanders were very active in the offseason, signing guys like Austin Eckler, Bobby Wagner, Zach Ertz, Marcus Mariota. So they've certainly been active. I've seen the comparison. This is kind of like a 2016 super team, if you will, with all the superstars. There, nonetheless, your team lives and dies by a quarterback. I don't expect the Commanders to be satisfied with Marcus Mariota as a starting quarterback. Yes, they do lack great depth at wide receiver. Terry McLaurin is their clear-cut wide receiver one. However, they really don't have anyone outside of Dotson as a solidified wide receiver. However, nonetheless, Daniels should be the pick, or at least a quarterback for that matter, should be the pick to say the least, as we are waiting for the second pick.
And how interesting must it be for these two prospects in Daniels and May to be waiting to see which one gets called first?
With the second pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, Washington Commanders select Jaden Daniels.
Appears the Commanders made the right move, picking the Heisman, most recent Heisman winner, Colin. How would you grade this pick by the Commanders?
Definitely an upgrade. They needed a quarterback. They don't want. Obviously, they have Marcus Mariota, and honestly, that is a little similar player comparison between the two. They're all both little mobile. I do think Jaden Daniels will be a good quarterback in this league. I can't wait to see him in the Commanders uniform. I do think he will be a special talent, and I can't wait to watch him.
New England is on the clock, and this is where things, more likely than not, will continue to get interesting and honestly a little bit more unpredictable. Drake May, Marvin Harrison, J.J. McCarthy. It feels like it's going to be one of those three names, barring a trade. That being said, we have seen crazier in the NFL draft in the past, as actually Brendan Ayuk is being linked to potential trade with the Patriots. So if you think those reports will go through and the Patriots are aggressively pursuing a wide receiver, would you want to take May here or McCarthy?
If teams are looking to get the number 3 overall pick, I mean, New England has said several times, the reports have come out several times saying that they want a haul. And one thing I have honestly said every single time the idea of New England and trades come up are, if you're going to trade, either you're going to have to trade a lot of draft picks now, or you're going to have to give up one of your better receivers or better skill position players to go get that number 3 overall pick. I don't see New England really trading out of this. I think they said if Drake May got picked 2, they may consider it, but I wouldn't have been surprised if they didn't.
New England absolutely in a new era, to say the least. The first year under Gerard Mayo, as Bill Belichick is no longer in the organization, in the NFL at all. I know the head coaching like carousel that we like to call it is kind of past, and like the storm has died down a little bit, but I know you're a Jets fan and a rival, and the Pats have kind of torched the Jets, just speaking from experience. Are you surprised Belichick doesn't have a current head coaching gig in the NFL right now, Colin?
Yeah, I do. It does question me a little bit whether maybe it's a part on him not wanting to coach, or whether he's just taking a year off or whatnot. I do think teams definitely were barking at him, I guess, for a job. I don't see who wouldn't holler at him. I know he hasn't had the best couple of years recently, but he does have many Super Bowls under his belt. And as the third pick is now in from the Patriots, what do you think's happening here, Mike?
You think a trade's brewing, Mike?
Well, not considering that the pick just got put in, I don't think there will be a trade. I think what probably was happening is a lot of teams started calling to maybe try to make one last push, but I think New England said there wasn't really anything on the table that they were ready to pull the trigger with. So I'm very much interested to see what they do here. I mean, not going for a trade, maybe seeing if you can get a receiver in a trade. Do they go with Marvin Harrison? Do they go with Drake May? To me, I don't think you can go wrong with either pick. Because the way I see it, if you go get Marvin Harrison, I wouldn't be surprised if New England tries to use their second-round pick to come back into the first round and go get a quarterback like a Michael Penix, maybe in the middle or about in the early 20s of the first round.
Well, let's look at the offseason acquisitions. Pats honestly lost more than they gained. They got some guys here and there. Jacoby Brissett returning, Antonio Gibson from the Commanders, KJ Osborne from Minnesota, but no really standout guys, if you're being entirely honest. KJ Osborne had been a wide receiver 3 at Minnesota for whatever it feels like, behind Jefferson and Thielen for all this time. The defense is a lot of young guys. However, we are assuming offensive here. Colin, I know you're haven't really been following the Patriots as much as the Jets, but what do you think is going to happen here with the Pats?
I think they go Drake May here. Personally, I do. He's an incredible talent, and obviously you do have 2 number 1 receivers at the palm of your hands at this moment. But who's going to throw them the ball at the moment? You need a quarterback, and I think this guy, he could be a franchise quarterback in Drake May. He is a special talent. I did think that the Giants were going to trade to this position and take him. So I think New England is definitely dead set on someone here, whether it be Drake May or Marvin Harrison Jr., because if not, they would have traded back with them. And if this pick isn't a receiver here, I'm sure the next 2 will be.
Pats are staying put.
In the 2024 NFL Draft, the New England Patriots select Drake May, quarterback.
Honestly, we talked about all of the potential trade. However, 1 through 3 have gone, I think, for at least all of our sakes here at WVOF, just as we predicted. The Patriots, find their franchise, but hopefully their franchise quarterback in Drake May, the college quarterback prospect out of North Carolina. Mike, as a Pats fan, how you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good about this pick. I'm glad they went with a quarterback that was projected to be one of the top quarterbacks in this draft class and not decide to go and get a J.J. McCarthy. I think, again, from what I've seen, the comparisons are to a Josh Allen-like quarterback, especially considering Josh Allen the last couple of years has torched New England in his own way with his ability to spread the field, use his legs, but also with that cannon of an arm. Obviously, the big question is potentially with age and stuff like that, how well does he develop? And that's why you brought in Jacoby Brissett, to let Drake May kind of develop, bring in a guy on a veteran quarterback on a cheaper deal to allow Drake to develop. And whether or not he gets playing time this year, that'll be what happens in this season. But again, I like the pick, and it's hopefully a new day in New England.
And we see a lot of times veteran quarterbacks more often than not having to step up from their expected backup role. Take Joe Flacco, for example. Started the year as a backup to Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson gets injured. Joe Flacco has to step in, takes home comeback player of the year, leads the Browns to the playoffs. And it's kind of a recurring trend, honestly, now that teams kind of have that veteran experience, guys who have been through the reins, if you will, taken snaps under center, know what NFL experience is like behind the center. So, seems the Patriots are happy with their pick. The Cardinals will be on the clock, and given that the chaos that we mentioned the possibility of did not come to fruition, it appears all but obvious the Cardinals will be taking Marvin Harrison Jr. right now.
As the youngest of four brothers, you've been competing your entire life. What kind of competitive attitude are you bringing?
Thoughts on the NFL draft hats while we have some dead air time?
I like I mean, they're they're nice draft hats. Back in the day, I definitely used to like them. I did like the Bears one for sure. Caleb Williams always fitted up in his nice outfits. But as we take a look at Patriots recent first round QBs, Jim Plunkett back in 1971, Tony Eason 1983, Drew Bledsoe, the QB prior to Tom Brady's era was knocked out of the game by Mo Lewis, linebacker on the Jets.
Yes.
And then the Tom Brady era began right after that. And then their most recent one before Drake May was Mac Jones, who is now part of the Jaguars. But I do think Marvin Harrison does go here at 4. He will have a tough name to live up to. His dad, who played his whole career with the Indianapolis Colts, over 1,100 receptions, 14,500 receiving yards. He was a true wide receiver 1. And Marvin Harrison has been nothing but outstanding at Ohio State, and I can't wait to see him play here in the NFL, whether it be, I'm sure, for the Cardinals, but if not, the Chargers will definitely snag him at 5.
Cardinals desperately need a wide receiver. They moved on from DeAndre Hopkins, who now plays for Tennessee. Their wide receiver right now is Michael Wilson. They have a lot of young guys, a lot of potential. It's all about reps, though. You feel like getting these guys into the fire. Speaking of wide receivers, Malik Neighbors is shown on the camera now. Chargers are on deck. I know I've said time and time again, and I sound like a broken record. It feels like the Vikings are lurking somewhere. They're definitely active in that phone room right now. Nonetheless, it appears Marvin Harrison Jr., who many people argue is honestly a top 2 talent in this year's draft class, will be taken here as Goodell is coming to the podium once again. I will say Detroit showed up and showed out tonight.
With the 4th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Arizona Cardinals select Marvin Harrison Jr.
No surprises here once again, as Marvin Harrison Jr. is an Arizona Cardinal. Cardinals didn't need to overcomplicate things, and they didn't. Feels like a lot of teams are staying put. A lot of these teams, some have more potential than others. What do you think of the lack of trade so far? And do you think this is going to be something to come as players are going to focus on development rather than outside talent?
To me, the lack of trades is not surprising. I think if New England made a trade, then you definitely see potentially like an Arizona maybe trade if they didn't like what happened at 3. But I'm going to assume if a team traded with New England, it would have been a team to take potentially a J.J. McCarthy. I think you look at it realistically, if you're a team like Minnesota who's been linked to making a trade, unless a team makes a trade, I don't see a team in the top 10 really making a quarterback move. Unless you want to try to go get a receiver now, then if I'm a team like the Giants, I'm not trying to leapfrog the Chargers, because at the end of the day, you still have, whether Neighbors gets picked here at 5 or not, there's still a guy from Washington named Roman Dunze who's still pretty good, in my opinion, to get in to fall to 6. I think an interesting pick would be Tennessee at 7. A lot of mock drafts recently have had them picking Joe Alt. Do they take Joe Alt? Do they take a skill position player? It'll be interesting to see.
What was that pick by New England? Why did we sell that?
My roommate Kevin Cammy joining us now here. You can sit. You can sit.
That's crazy.
You can sit.
J.J. McCarthy or Bo Nix. We sold.
What are your actually? I'm actually curious. I know we're Chargers are on the block here. We don't know if they're still going to trade their pick yet. What are your thoughts on J.J. McCarthy? Am I calling you?
Yeah.
Don't know why. But
We should have picked J.J. McCarthy. I think he would have been a better fit for the Patriots system. And it's a shame that once again the Patriots sold and do not know how to draft.
two varying opinions on the Patriots and their draft move. Nonetheless, I think the Patriots made the right choice. Your team lives and dies by the quarterback, Kevin.
Yes, J.J. McCarthy in the Patriots system will be a good quarterback. I don't think. Who do we? I don't even know his name. What do we draft?
Drake May out of
May.
North Carolina.
Exactly. I don't think he will fit in the Patriots system. Bo Nix, I feel like will thrive in the Patriots system. Yeah.
That being said, the Chargers are on the clock. Who seems more likely, Colin? Odunze or Neighbors?
I think for sure they have to go Malik Neighbors here. Roman Dunze is a special talent, but Malik Neighbors can do everything. He is the surefire number one that the Chargers desperately needs. Justin Herbert needs special talent around him after losing both Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, and also the tight end in Everett.
And also Austin Eckler, who
Yep.
is a playmaker. It seems like the Chargers brought in Harbaugh, but all the weapons left.
Yeah, but I do think the Chargers need to leave this pick with Neighbors, and
Did
I-
J.J. McCarthy go yet?
No, not yet.
That's crazy. I thought we'd be a top 5 draft.
Let's see. Chargers, as of right now, are
They need receivers.
staying put.
Oh, Marvin Harrison Jr. is good enough. He's not going to do well in the Cardinals. That's unfortunate.
But how important is it for you to create your own legacy in this league?
Giants are on the clock next. I know there are a lot of Giants fans here, being in Fairfield, the Northeast. Everyone's big on the Meadowlands and MetLife. Mock drafts had Chargers trading the pick to the Vikings initially, going to pick J.J. McCarthy. This pick is taking a little longer, so interesting to see if it will be traded. But if the Giants we assume more likely than not are taking a wide receiver. I think the Chargers are going to take a wide receiver here because I don't think Quinton Johnson is a solidified wide receiver one. And as Colin alluded to, you lost all of your playmakers basically except for Quinton Johnson. As I think they're going to have our first commercial break here, ironically. But picks 1 through 4, no surprises. Are you surprised with everything that's happened so far, Mike?
I am not surprised at all. I do, in my opinion, as a New England fan, I do love the Drake May pickup. It's definitely to take probably one of the younger quarterbacks in this draft class, but also a lot more potential than I think like a J.J. McCarthy or a Bo Nix. To me, if Bo Nix is gonna get picked, he would get either picked in the back half of this first round if a team really needs a quarterback, or he would easily be a day 2 pick for me, probably a middle second round pick. J.J. McCarthy, I think, because of the fact that with the national championship and how he played in the playoffs, that's been a big reason why his hype and his draft stock have increased. But I think 1 through 4 has been solid picks. I'm not shocked by anything. Pick 6, like we've all said, I think the Giants should take a receiver. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if they potentially go with a Joe Alt if they say to themselves, I'd rather have the Giants say that they'd rather have a tackle and rather solidify themselves to try to protect Daniel Jones a little bit more. But I think if the Giants are smart, they're going to take a receiver. because of the fact that they lost Saquon Barkley in the offseason to their rivals, the Eagles. Your receiver one being, I can't even remember.
Quentin Johnson? Or
No,
who is this?
For the Giants.
Oh, it's not Kenny Galladay
It's
anymore.
not Kenny Galladay. I can tell you that much.
Let's see, Darius Slayton, but he's injury prone.
Darius Slayton.
Sterling Shepard as well. You brought in Darren Waller last offseason, but he
he's
rarely
also
played.
injury-prone as well.
Trying to figure this out. Jalen Hyatt was recently drafted. Wan'Dale Robinson, I will give him credit. He is fairly underrated. So Chargers pick is in, and it appears the Chargers are making a pick. Colin, think it's Neighbors?
I think it's Neighbors, and then Adunze will follow with the Giants. As we've mentioned, Herbert really has no one to throw the ball to, and who better than Malik Neighbors at this point. We did see Marvin Harrison Jr. go with the last pick. With obviously the next top two receivers being Adunze and Neighbors, I do think Neighbors will go. We'll leave this building with the Chargers hat on.
Would not be surprised. Chargers Neighbors was actually house shopping in Los Angeles, according to reports. And, let's say social media, anything can and will be used. So Chargers more likely than not going to take a wide receiver here, barring a pick. But we've talked about the Chargers and the potential for trading the pick to Minnesota. You think J.J. McCarthy will still be on the board at pick? I'm always forgetting what pick it is. Pick 11 when the Vikings are still on the board.
I think
next.
I think as long I don't see a team between here and 11 that need a quarterback. The only team that I could say is like the sneakiest of quarterback picks would be the Jets, but that's more likely if they don't want to trade the pick, but there's nothing really available there. But again, considering what's still potentially available, barring any trade of any team that needs a quarterback, I don't see the Giants taking a quarterback. I think they land. The Giants probably between now and 11 are probably the most likely to potentially take a quarterback, with news a few weeks ago or almost a month ago of potentially them taking a quarterback. Otherwise, every other team between now and 11 has a quarterback that they, I think, are confident with to start next season.
Daniel Jones experiment. He was definitely paid, got injured in that game versus the Raiders last season. Interesting to see what the Giants will do. Nonetheless, the Chargers are ready as Goodell takes the podium.
In the 2024 NFL Draft, the Los Angeles Chargers select Joe Alt.
Wow.
Okay.
First surprise of the draft. It is Joe Alt, the offensive tackle out of Notre Dame, who is selected to protect Justin Herbert in addition to Rashawn Slater. I think our first surprise of the draft. I'm going to start with you.
Yeah,
Thoughts?
Yeah, I did think that we're going to get some firepower for Herbert. Obviously not. They wanted to protect him. And who better than to have at both ends of at both tackles in Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt. I mean, the Chargers are going to have to make work with what they do. They do not have many skill positions, but I guess they just want to protect Herbert and see what they can do with what they have.
Joe Alt, undisputably the best offensive lineman. I think really one of the few who is a blue chip prospect, if that term still has any relevance and meaning, 21st century today. However, if you're the Giants, you've had to have hit the jackpot. Now you have your choice in Neighbors or Odunze, more likely than not. Mike, I know you were very surprised by that pick. What stands out to you?
I think what stands out to me is the fact that what the Chargers gave up in the offseason, to me, it solidified that they would take a receiver at 5. But also kind of remembering back to earlier in the offseason, looking at the earlier mock drafts, a lot of these mock drafts did have Joe Alt going 5. So at first I was shocked, but then I kind of went back in the memory bank and remembered that it's not a huge surprise again, obviously, looking at last season, Justin Herbert, obviously, a lot of under duress, a lot, it felt like last year. And to potentially shore up both tackles for you, your outside kind of covered. It'll be interesting to see what they do, and it'll be interesting for a team like Tennessee, who in a lot of recent mock drafts were seen to be taking Joe Alt at that position. Do they trade back? Do they say to themselves, "We got Calvin Ridley. Now whoever's left between Malik Neighbors and Rome Odunze, do we pair one of them with Calvin Ridley?" Especially with the departure of Derrick Henry, it gives young quarterback Will Levis more weapons to work with.
Well, Will Levis does have a lot of weapons. Titans have been active in free agency, acquiring the likes of Tony Pollard, Calvin Ridley, in addition to DeAndre Hopkins. However, it appears, yes, you said it, Mike, yourself. Every CBS sports mock draft I saw had Joe Alt. So it's interesting to see how they will, I think, and honestly, readjust, because I thought Joe Alt was for sure in Tennessee, as they've been in desperate need of bolstering that O-line this decade, to say the least. The Giants pick is in. Back-to-back surprises. However, I think there's a 97% chance that this is a wide receiver. Certainly, you need an offensive playmaker, as Mike, you mentioned. They lost Saquon Barkley to rival Eagles. Yes, you got Devin Singletary. However, you need an explosive playmaker, and I think Malik Neighbors' speed, versatility, and ability just to wreak havoc on a football field can do wonders for this Giants offense. Giants, I think they've solidified a foundation defensively, acquiring guys like Brian Burns in the offseason, in addition to Dexter Lawrence, Kayvon Thibodeau. So you have to think offense here if you're the Giants. Oh, that quarterback room is interesting. Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, Tommy DeVito. Giants would be foolish to take a quarterback here, right, Colin?
I mean, they do have obviously Daniel Jones did get injured last year and wasn't the hottest before then. You have, as you said earlier, the Giants have options here, and they could do anything they want here. They could go quarterback. I mean, but I do think they go receiver here, and why not snag Neighbors? I mean, I sure as heck thought he was going with the 5th pick there. Joe Alt going 5 there. With both old Ravens running backs and Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins in there, they will have room to run behind that offensive line. But the Giants pick is in now.
Giants capitalize, and from our perspectives, at least, taking Malik Neighbors, I would give this an A. Given that I think the Giants would have been happy with Odunze. Home run pick here, though, by the Giants. Just an absolutely explosive playmaker. The speed is unmatched, as we saw in the 40-yard dash. Just during those various events, his athletic ability was on full display. However, the Giants still have a way to go. However, this is a great start, Mike.
Indeed. I mean, solidifying potentially a number 1 receiver right now. I mean, with a lot of what's happened in the past in your receiver room, going even back to when Odell Beckham Jr. was on your team, it's just seemed like they have not been able to have a consistent receiver room or a healthy enough receiver room where a number 1 is very clear. This, if Neighbors can be healthy, he is just going to be a home run hitter and is going to be one guy that is going to be difficult to guard in the NFL and will be a great addition for Daniel Jones and allow him to kind of extend the field a little bit more with Malik Neighbors.
Well, I understand the intention is behind Daniel Jones. However, that was a significant injury with that ACL. I believe he suffered against the Raiders. We don't know if he's going to be 100% to start and open the season. That would open the door maybe for Drew Lock or potentially America's darling, in a sense, Tommy DeVito. Nonetheless, Giants, in my opinion, absolutely hit a home run. I know my buddy from home, Ryan Johansson, is smiling. Shout out Ryan Johansson. Tennessee on the clock, though, now. Joe Alt off the board. What do you do now?
I think if you're Tennessee at this point, you're either saying to yourself, let's go take a call from a team that's like maybe even a Minnesota. Because if I'm Minnesota here, maybe you can capitalize. I mean, looking at what mock drafts have really said, I think with a team like Atlanta, I think they're gonna be probably the first team to take a defensive player potentially in a Dallas Turner. And if I'm Tennessee, if you can even looking right now on the ESPN graphics, seeing Chicago at 9, potentially only to drop 2 spots, give yourself a little bit more time unless you've already prepared for this. As the clock ticks under 5 minutes, to me, it's either you trade or you potentially say to yourself, "Are we okay taking one of the second, probably one of seen as one of the second best prospects in the tackle position in Talise Fuaga, I believe from Oregon State."
Now, Colin, Titans were active in the free agency department and kind of feel it was an absolute shock to us. I'm assuming to that front office, as a lot of moves made are behind the scenes and really a lot of draft deals aren't done until the last minute. I'd say, in my opinion, the gap between the best offensive lineman and the next best, no disrespect to Talise Fuaga, who is incredibly talented, the right tackle out of Oregon State, but Joe Alt was a unanimous All-American, 3-time All-American in his career at Notre Dame. So, would you be surprised if the Titans traded down?
Personally, no, and I think that's why the clock is running a bit low right now. Obviously, the pick is actually in right now. Personally, I am curious to see what they do here. Maybe there could be the first defensive player picked at this moment in the draft. I'm not sure, but Titans could go anywhere with this pick at this moment.
I think this is the first pick where I truly don't know what is going to happen. I had an expectation. I was wrong. However, I just don't know with this pick. We have a trade.
And there could this.
And we're going to a commercial.
The clock reset, maybe?
The clock did reset, so it appears a trade is on our hands. Big Mike, you mentioned Minnesota capitalizing. Is it them?
If it's them, this Minnesota may have just gotten away with a huge steal. I mean, they were seen to want to get to 3, and if they got to 3, they would have had to give up a haul to go get potentially JJ McCarthy since they've really wanted him. But now with Tennessee kind of being a little bit in limbo right now, it's the perfect time to capitalize. I mean, Tennessee probably wouldn't expect much. They'd at least probably expect 11. And if Tennessee really wanted to get a little bit aggressive, they could say, we'll take 11 and 23 or your 2 first-round picks and call it a day.
Now, the Titans have addressed areas of need in the offseason. You know, the offense does have some solid playmakers. They're still trying to establish a little bit of a defensive identity. However, L'Jarius Sneed, absolute stud, they acquired cornerback, and they paid him ransomly. So they do have their cornerstone, if you will, defensively. So, you know, I'm kind of starting to see where Colin was going at with not really a surprising move. We're not going to spoil anything here on WVOF Sports, and we're going to find out just when you guys find out if the commercial ends. Atlanta will have the next pick nonetheless, followed by Chicago Bears. We are at pick number 7. Once again, we'd like to thank you guys for listening to WF's coverage of an NFL 2024 draft. This was a tradition started by Colin O'Callaghan, last year's sports director here at WVOF, who graduated. Huge congrats. Colin's doing his own NFL live stream tonight, so we'll give him a shout out. He has done great things since, and we are just continuing the foundation that he built here, and none of this would be possible. So thank you, Colin O'Callaghan, as well as Sean Vowles, who is also an integral part in putting WVOF Sports on the map. So one team. Who do you think the Titans are giving it to?
To me, the obvious choice is going to be Minnesota. Like I've said already several times, they have been a team that is heavily looked to get in the top 10. And that potentially puts into question what other teams potentially in the back half of this draft or the middle of this draft that are looking to get a little bit higher. Maybe to go get J.J. McCarthy. Maybe to go get someone else. Maybe one of the top defensive players. Maybe to go get a tackle, or maybe just to see what's available in the receiver market at that point in the draft.
We will be coming back right now. Nonetheless, the Texans actually made that move last year, taking Arizona's, or not taking because you can't do that. Taking, or why do I keep saying taking? Trading up to acquire Arizona's number 3 pick, taking Will Anderson Jr. in that place, establishing an identity and culture with rookies leading it, and that has come to wild success.
I will say this, the 11, 12, and 13 picks all are in need of a QB, that being the Vikings, who we think is the front runner for this trade up. Then the Broncos, who have a completely abysmal quarterback room with their latest addition being Zach Wilson. And then the Las Vegas Raiders, who could be on lookout for QB. And as we are finding out now,
Okay. The Titans held on to their pick. Off the board is J.C. Latham, an offensive lineman out of Alabama. Certainly a talented prospect in his own right. According to this mock draft I have here, he fell to the Chargers, but at pick 11, which was in that trade with J.J. McCarthy. So the Titans needed offensive line desperately. They still get an offensive lineman, so job successful in that department. It appears the Titans didn't really want to go out of their way and give up such a lucrative pick because they didn't know when the next offensive lineman would be available. Because, this offensive lineman class is very top heavy. Mike, are you surprised?
I'm not surprised that they took a tackle. I think in a lot of respects, a lot of these top prospects have their own strengths. Looking at kind of Latham's draft card, I mean, a young tackle will be 21 going into the season. Despite drawing his 18 penalties over 2 years, he has a lot of room to improve in anticipation. But because of the rare combination of his size and his speed, at 6'6", being 335 pounds, being a fast tackle, he has, I think, a lot of potential to be a great tackle in this league and a great tackle for the Tennessee Titans.
Appears Latham is hyped to have been selected at 8. I'd say honestly picked ahead of a majority, and there's the lift. That's the first lift of Roger Goodell. We remember Kayvon Thibodeau, Micah Parsons also. Felt like it was only a matter of time. Nonetheless, the Titans get their guys. We're picking up the pace here a little bit here, WVOF Sports, and also the NFL Draft finally is the Falcons pick is already in. Falcons have certainly had an active offseason, acquiring Kirk Cousins, a.k.a. Kirk O'Chains. You mentioned Darnell Mooney, who the Bears lost. He went to the Atlanta Falcons. Rondale Moore also in a trade with Desmond Ridder. You got rid of him. Bijan Robinson looking to get more involved in the offense. Do you think they're going defensive or offensive? I know Mike is kind of high on the defensive end, but I'm curious to hear your perspective, Colin.
I think this will be the first defensive pick of the draft. The Falcons behind, as people call him, the old head of Kirk Cousins, they have a young talent surrounding him. And Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier as your backs with Drake London, Darnell Mooney, and the recent acquisition of Rondale Moore. You got Kyle Pitts, as they called the unicorn, at tight end. You do have an awesome offensive line. And I do think the Falcons go here with the edge from UCLA in Latu Latu. who in the past 2 years racked. In 2022, he did have 10.5 sacks, and then 2023, he did have 13. I do think this will be the first defensive pick of the draft here for the Falcons.
Falcons, they have gone offensive in the past couple of years in the draft with the likes of Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, and Drake London, all players looking to take a drastic jump with a new quarterback at the helm for the Atlanta Falcons, as we see J.J. McCarthy still waiting. It appears the Vikings might get what they want and not have to move at all. As you know, Chicago got their quarterback in Caleb Williams, so they're out of the question. The Jets, your only two quarterbacks on the roster are A-Rod and Tyrod Taylor. However, I think you have bigger aspirations than drafting a quarterback who's going to sit behind Aaron Rodgers for who knows how long anymore. So one name that I've seen linked to the Falcons is Byron Murphy II, a defensive tackle out of Texas. And the Falcons right now, they haven't been the best team defensively, to say the very least. We know the offense is up there, though the record isn't indicative of that. However, the Falcons have made strides defensively. They acquired Jesse Bates last year in the offseason. Grady Jarrett's a perennial Pro Bowler. However, it feels like the Falcons can definitely use some work on defense. So, once again, would not be surprised if this is a defensive pick as we wait for Goodell to take the podium for the 8th time this evening. I think Booger McFarland said it perfectly. They cannot get to the quarterback. Has been an issue, I think. I'm not the biggest Falcons fan or football watcher. However, we know that secondary is one of the better ones. A.J. Terrell, Jesse Bates, it appears. Falcons, you need to get to the quarterback to give pressure. Otherwise, the quarterback's going to have their way. Don't be surprised if Byron Murphy II is off the board, as Booger McFarland is heavily, I wouldn't say demanding, but encouraging the Falcons to take Murphy here. Wow. Okay. We've got something to talk about. This is a Greenberg said it perfectly there. Stunner. Michael Penix Jr., QB out of Washington, off the board. Your reaction, we'll get to both of you. Your reaction shocked me first. Go ahead.
All right, so this total shocker to me. I totally thought they were going defense here to shore up. As Booger said, they did not get to the quarterback, but I guess they just want points on the board at this point.
But my thing is, you already drafted Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
Not drafted. Excuse me. You got Kirk Cousins, also on a lucrative contract, which you are given you're putting a bunch of faith in that man, and you do this and draft Michael Penix Jr., who we don't even know when he's going to play. The Falcons signed Cousins to a 4-year contract, so that's 4 years that Penix, we think, might be honest. I understand injuries are a part of the game, but this just doesn't make sense to me. Mike, I want to hear your take on this.
To me, this is shocking, but looking at Kirk Cousins, obviously the Achilles injury that took him out towards the end of the season, and you wonder, is he going to be ready for the start of the season? Maybe this is why they picked up Penix, but also Penix himself is quarterback in his collegiate career that has been riddled with injuries. Several knee injuries early in his career. I mean, you saw in the national championship, Michigan absolutely just getting to him, and just you saw him grabbing his ribs towards the back half of that game. So you wonder, what is going on with Kirk Cousins? Is there something that we don't know about, or do they think that Penix is the future and they just want Kirk Cousins for maybe 1 or 2 years and let Penix develop?
Yeah, I mean, as Andrew stated, Kirk is on a 4-year deal, and as is Michael Penix is 23 years old. At the end of the contract, he'll be 27. So I don't know what their idea is to do with Penix. and Kirk Cousins, as Mike said, is something going on with Cousins that we don't know. At this point, with the Bears pick in, we are stunned here at WVOF. This is a crazy occurrence to all of us.
Well, the Bears have just had everything going their ways. Now you have Odunze right for the taking. It would be a shock. 2 of the past 3 picks have been shockers. However, the Bears, I don't want to say the rich get richer because the Bears definitely still need a lot, as they're not in the cream of the crop of the NFL right now. But, I mean, based off of teams who have made the pick, you could have not asked for a better turnout for the Bears than Caleb Williams and potentially Rome Odunze.
Yeah, I don't think there was a single mock draft snagging Penix at 8 for the Falcons. I mean, they just got Kirk Cousins, primed vet. I mean, he is coming off the Achilles, but I don't think any analyst saw this one coming. We sure in the studio here did not see that one coming. I mean, as Andrew said, the Bears just have the cream of the crop right now. And as they're showing, Michael Penix's injury history, 2018 torn right ACL, 2019 dislocated non-throwing shoulder, 2020 a second torn right ACL, in 2021 separated throwing shoulder in his throwing arm. I mean, this guy, he's already 23 years old. You have Kirk Cousins on a 4-year deal. I just want to know what was going on in the front office. What was their discussions with this? I'm stunned myself here just watching this.
Rappaport suggests that it is a succession plan. As you mentioned, there might be something about Kirk Cousins' rehab that we don't know. So maybe they're playing it safe. They only have Taylor Heineke on the roster as a quarterback. Nonetheless, the first stunner, as Greeny put it perfectly, as the Bears are going to pick here.
Mm-hmm.
All right, the Bears get their guys. The hype is real in Chicago. Bears capitalizing on who was available.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at most mock drafts, I mean, in my mock draft, I had Marvin Harrison going 3, but I was not surprised in New England taking a quarterback. And at this point, looking at it, I would not have been surprised if Odunze fell to 9, but I didn't think he'd fall in this way, where you have 4 quarterbacks taken in the first 8 picks.
And one of those quarterbacks, not J.J. McCarthy.
And it's shocking.
Trade alert. Sorry to cut you off. This is a Jets pick 2, Minnesota. So, not that big of a deal. You're only flipping 1 pick back. Oh, wait. Oh.
Whoa.
Hang on. This is getting interesting now. Minnesota, according to our TV, has the 10th and 11th pick now. The Jets trade with the Vikings. The Jets get 11, 129, and 157 overall for 10 and 203, according to Mike Garafolo. So the TV may... So according to Garafolo, the Jets, they're swapping picks one in front of the other. However, our TV is suggesting something much different, to say the least.
Yeah. It just turned.
And
So it did just turn.
So graphic operators, they are working as quickly as they can to make sure that both New York Jets fans and Minnesota fans do not get overreact to something like that.
Colin Lynch almost had a heart attack here. Over here. But we just spoke about J.J. McCarthy. It seems inevitable, Mike.
It seems inevitable. If the Minnesota Vikings have wanted J.J. McCarthy, them jumping the Giants, to me means one of 2 things, and I'm going to go with the latter. Number 1, the Jets may have considered taking J.J. McCarthy, which I honestly do not believe they would have done as their first priority. Or number 2, as Colin said earlier, that 11, 12, and 13 with Minnesota, with Denver, and with the Raiders, all teams that need quarterbacks or don't have a solidified quarterback 1, they may have been calling New York and saying a little bit earlier, saying, hey, let's get number 10, and we'll give you 12, or we'll give you 13 or something like that. As Minnesota's pick is quickly in after the trade, it seems inevitable that this has got to be J.J. McCarthy as the 5th quarterback taken in 10 picks.
I want to go back to Michael Penix. I don't think at least from mock drafts I haven't read, I didn't think it was in many first-round draft picks. Obviously, the injury history is very concerning. We just saw the graphic: 2 torn ACLs, a shoulder injury in 2021. Those types of injuries, especially significant injuries, don't go away. And, they have the potential to linger throughout the longevity of someone's career. So a shocking sequence of events, to say the least. I don't know if we're in for a stunner. I don't think we are. Nonetheless, believe we are going to go to a commercial. But does the pick of Michael Penix Jr. elevate, let's say, a Broncos or a Raiders, or is it the Saints at 14? I believe it is the Saints at 14. Does the pick of Penix kind of tick the urgency meter on Bo Nix, saying, hey, we need a quarterback, and we need a quarterback now? Because you mentioned the Broncos quarterback room. No. The Raiders, Jimmy Garoppolo is now on the Rams. Bo Nix might be getting picked higher than we expected.
And even today, I looked at like a mock draft from CBS Sports today. I forget who the analyst was who did the mock draft. They had Bo Nix going to Denver, I believe, at 12, or if Denver maybe traded back. At this point, if you're a team like Denver, like the Raiders, those teams, like the Saints potentially, even though I don't see the Saints really going in on a quarterback, but definitely with Denver and with the Raiders, you wonder if Bo Nix is there. If Denver, let's say, takes Bo Nix at 12, what do the Raiders do? They have
Gardner Minshew. And they have Aiden O'Connell. I don't think the Raiders, especially with the culture they've established, Antonio Pierce being the new head coach, he seems very adamant about a win now. I understand that division with the Chiefs. Everyone's going to pick the Chiefs, and more likely than not, they're going to win the division again. The Chargers, Herbert doesn't have any weapons. The Broncos, they don't have a bona fide quarterback, and the Raiders, they also don't have a bona fide quarterback. So you mentioned with the Raiders, Bo Nix, but it is important to note Broncos do have the pick before them. So the Broncos might capitalize as we assume J.J. McCarthy will be off the board after this pick. Your game plan for the Jets hasn't changed at all, despite the fact you changed one pick down.
Yeah, definitely looking for Bowers here. As we just saw with 8 and 9, we saw teammates Michael Penix Jr. followed by Rome Odunze, both part of Washington's team. They were special to watch together. Good to see them go back to back. They definitely had a special moment behind the scenes. I definitely think the Vikings go here with J.J. McCarthy, and the Jets go with Brock Bowers at 11 following. Following that, there will be stuff up for grabs at 12 and 13. The magic will start happening. Phones will start ringing soon. But for sure, I think J.J. McCarthy, as he is at home with his family, he will end up. He definitely got the ring from Minnesota, and we're just waiting for Roger Goodell to go up to the podium at this moment.
Fun fact so far, not one defensive player has been picked yet. And Vikings are looking to make it 10. Jets might extend it to 11. The offense has definitely gotten much more spotlight than the defense in drafts. Offense tend to dominate drafts. As on the defensive side, there may be one or two like bona fide studs. Think back to the Myles Garrett draft, the 2017 draft with the likes of T.J. Watt, Aiden Hutchinson in the 2022 draft. Pierce, the Vikings have their pick. They are ready to go. If it is McCarthy, though, it's a field of quarterbacks that is relatively young. Jordan Love, why am I blanking? Jordan Love, Jared Goff, Caleb Williams, and JJ McCarthy. So, interesting turn of events here is when a year ago, the field or a couple years ago, this field was completely different. So you had Aaron Rodgers, Jared Goff, Kirk Cousins, and Justin Fields. Youth is on full display as the stars of tomorrow are in the league before we know it and making an impact immediately. JJ McCarthy is an interesting case because his stock skyrocketed during the combine. Do you think he is a win now quarterback?
I think, as I've stated earlier, he is a winner at Michigan. He did his thing there with Harbaugh as his coach. And now, as the pick is coming in now, I think JJ McCarthy will go in there. And I think he can win games there for the Vikings and keep Justin Jefferson happy over there at wide receiver.
Vikings did lose a lot this free agency, losing the likes of Danielle Hunter to the Texans, KJ Osborne to the Pats.
After he was injured during his second deployment to Iraq. We salute him and thank his family and TAPS, the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, which offers care to those grieving the loss of a military loved one. I'm now going to turn this over to Sergeant Ewing's nephew, Asher, who will announce the pick in honor of his uncle.
Going to have a special guest picker here, announcing the Vikings pick.
With the 10th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Minnesota Vikings select JJ McCarthy.
And it is JJ McCarthy. The hype and the photoshops once again come to reality. Vikings lose Kirk Cousins, replace him with JJ McCarthy. National champion, not a bad resume to have. Nonetheless, the Vikings fans seem to be happy, but are you 100% sold on McCarthy?
I think McCarthy he's got a lot of potential. I mean, obviously coming off the national championship run. I think the biggest question is how will he perform in this? How will he perform in an offense like this? With the likes of a Justin Jefferson, you wonder how they're going to connect, whether or not McCarthy immediately starts working out with Jefferson to get that chemistry. And as we kind of see, the Jets pick immediately goes in, and I wouldn't be surprised here at the Jets if they take Bowers. I mean, top tight end prospect is seen easily, I think, as a top 10, top 5, potentially even prospect in most big boards in the NFL. And Colin, what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely think the Jets are looking at 11 here for Bowers. They only have Tyler Conklin, who is a good tight end. That is their only tight end at this moment. They have firepower everywhere else. They shored up the offensive line over the free agency. The defense was ranked number 1 last year. The pass rush is crazy. Just got Hassan Reddick. It's just a team you don't want to face on Sunday. And to put Brock Bowers at tight end to stretch the field alongside Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams, it would be special to watch, especially with Aaron Rodgers throwing the rock.
Tight end does seem likely here. CJ Uzomah left the Jets for the Eagles. Tyler Conklin is a great solid tight end, not the biggest playmaker with Brock Bowers. You mentioned a top 5 talent. I would honestly agree if we based off of like overalls, like let's say in Madden, he would definitely be up there in the top 10. However, of course, in the draft, fit is much more of a priority than raw talent, if you will. However, I guess there's a fine line. If you have a great prospect like Bowers, would a team take him? That has not been the case. Our streak of no defensive player taken is still alive. I for sure thought that was going to be ended at Atlanta. Nonetheless, they stunned us all and took Michael Penix Jr., the quarterback out of Washington. Vikings have high hopes for JJ McCarthy. I'm curious, out of all quarterbacks drafted so far this draft, who has the best or most potential to pull a CJ Stroud? And what I mean by that is worst to first and uplift an organization to down in the dumps to a contender with a bright future.
I'll definitely say, obviously, Caleb Williams had all the hype coming in, but I do think he has the most potential to uplift the Bears organization. Obviously, we saw CJ Stroud having the help at wide receiver from Nico Collins, and in the draft, they got Tank Dell. Well, here in the first round, in the top 10 picks, they got Caleb Williams, and you know what? They went and got their number 3 receiver within the top 10 in Rome Odunze. You have Caleb Williams throwing the ball to Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, and Rome Odunze, and handing the ball off to DeAndre Swift. And the Bears defense, it is all right, but as we know, CJ Stroud last year, he made fireworks with the team he had, and I think Caleb Williams can light it up in Chicago for the Bears with this team.
And I do also agree in terms of this year. I'm gonna give it to Caleb Williams as well, as the Jets pick is about to be announced.
Tackle.
Okay. Olumonuwayu Fashanu, an offensive tackle out of Penn State. The Jets have had injury problems in the offensive line department. Vera Tucker has not stayed healthy, to say the least. Mekhi Becton was an injury machine, if you will, before he got released. Tyron Smith, you brought in, is injury prone. Thoughts?
I mean, as said, the one thing that has riddled the Jets is the O-line health. And the GM of Joe Douglas, he believes in building through the trenches in both offense and defense. And to me, this pick, obviously I wanted Bowers at tight end, but this is, looking in the long run, in hindsight, this could be the smartest pick. As stated, we did get Tyron Smith, but he is injury prone. Vera Tucker, even though he is a plug and play player, he did tear his tricep in years past. And just Joe Douglas being him, he wants to build through the trenches. And I did think originally that the Jets would trade back. And if they were to trade back, they would go lineman. I did think it'd be more than possibly just one pick back. But in hindsight, I do think this is a smart move by the Jets. And that is, I believe, a good pick here for the Jets.
Brock Bowers definitely the much more known and widespread name. However, it seems that the Jets are happy with their pick. However, the Jets fans on the TV, they were kind of surprised, it seemed like, from that initial reaction. Nonetheless, Fashanu, as you see on screen, 2023 Big Ten Offensive Lineman of the Year. That that type of award is certainly earned, not given. Especially with the talent across the college football landscape as a whole, as the Broncos pick is now in. Big Mike, is it Bo Nix?
To me, I think if you're looking at what Denver has right now, obviously, I believe Jerry Jeudy was
traded to the Browns. Cortland Sutton is in active trade talks.
Yes.
Tim Patrick cannot stay healthy. Their uniforms are not good, if that counts for anything. But this team needs a lot. And does this team, Broncos country, let's ride, does this team ride with Zach Wilson? They shouldn't, but are they going to?
I think at this point they may take Bo Nix for the fact that after this pick, there's not really the quarterback draft class then kind of goes off a little bit. Yes, you have, I believe, the quarterback from Florida State,
Jordan Travis,
who, again,
injury questions, though.
Before he got injured. I mean, on an undefeated team, on the undefeated team with FSU that was going to look like they were going to get into the playoffs, and then he gets injured. FSU doesn't get the number 4 or number 3 spot. Alabama gets in. Texas gets in, and that brings a lot of questions with the college football playoffs.
That's a whole other debate.
But I think at this point, you have to say, I think Denver's saying to themselves, we got a young quarterback. Why not just do a quarterback room and see who's better? I could also see them taking Brock Bowers, considering he's fallen this far, and saying you need another guy to pair with Cortland Sutton potentially, or you need a guy who you could say is your clear-cut one. And at this point, a tight end, you don't really have that big name tight end, especially in the AFC West, with a guy like a Travis Kelce out there. Though Travis Kelce is getting older, still he is Travis Kelce, and the name itself brings a lot of attention.
Looking at their tight end, Adam Troutman is the starting tight end for the Broncos right now. Broncos definitely need a lot of areas addressed, as we expect them to be in the bottom half of the standings. Finished the 2023 season, I believe, 8-9. However, they definitely had more downs than ups, to say the least. That whole Russell Wilson era or experiment is behind them. Still paying a lucrative amount of money, by the way, as the Steelers are only paying him, I think, $1 million to play for them in 2024, whereas the Broncos are taking a very severe cap hit, which I believe is the largest in NFL history. So, Broncos, I think a good analogy to describe this is they have their back in a corner. Now they just need to do damage control, it feels like.
Indeed, and while Denver's pick is in, I do want to go back to the last pick with Fashanu. I think a big thing is he was early in draft and a lot of mock drafts. He was seen as probably the second tackle to go off the board after Alt. One of the young prospects. Again, a lot of talent. The biggest thing he needs to do is just get stronger. I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, 6'6", 319. If he can build himself some strength, like they said in the broadcast, he has the potential to be a Pro Bowler. He has that potential to even be an All-Pro. So I think if he can be developed well and going to the Jets, he'll be behind Moses and Tyron Smith, 2 very good tackles in this league. The benefit is you get to learn behind 2 great veterans, and you get to just develop yourself and get stronger. And at the same time, for Jets, they built, like Colin said, they built depth at a position that they were injury-riddled last year.
We'll say being lean for an offensive lineman is not an ideal property, just given the overall size and strength of defensive players as a whole, let alone offensive players. You see guys like DK Metcalf, absolutely jacked, Derrick Henry, and their workout routines and regimens just otherworldly, if you will. Nonetheless, you mentioned the offensive lineman potential to go All-Pro. One of the guys you look at is Tristan Wirfs, who honestly, in my opinion, had a seamless transition into the NFL. Going right under Tom Brady, played as if he was there. Day one he walked in, solidified himself as a force, has been since perennial Pro Bowler, All-Pro, as the Broncos pick is in, and Goodell is ready as we are.
Wow.
Okay. Bo Nix off the board. All 5 of, I believe it was 5 at least. All 6 quarterbacks for that matter, excuse me. All the 6 top quarterbacks, widely regarded, off the board. Was this the right move by the Broncos?
I think in terms of what they were looking for in a quarterback, this being probably the best quarterback available at this point, I think it's a good pick. I think it's going to be, I mean, you kind of know what you're getting with Bo Nix. He's not somebody who's going to be super flashy, but he does have a good arm. So if you can put him in the right system, you can get the offense gelled with his play style. I think you've got a good chance for a quarterback for the future. Maybe not a competitive year this year, but definitely a developmental year for whoever you decide to be your starting quarterback, or just even for both Zach Wilson and Bo Nix.
Raiders will have the next pick. All quarterbacks are off. Gardner Minshew, I think, given the state of I don't expect them to go with the Jordan Travis or Michael Pratt out of Tulane. Raiders, they kind of got screwed in my opinion. I think, I really haven't followed on this team a lot. However, the development is definitely interesting to see how the storylines change with each pick being made. Gardner Minshew arguably led the Colts to an improbable playoff push as the Raiders pick is in now. So Gardner Minshew does have some potential and, is not a terrible starter. Is he going to get you over the hump is the question. I don't think so. The Raiders have definitely made some moves on the defensive end of things in the free agency, acquiring Christian Wilkins to accompany Max Crosby on that defensive line. Excuse me. But not really an active offseason, except for the fact that you acquired Alexander Madison out of Minnesota and Gardner Minshew. Will this be our first defensive pick is my main question.
Yeah, as you said, they did go and get Christian Wilkins, the force in the middle of the line to accompany Crosby. Could there be an edge to accompany the other side on Crosby and have a little three-man sandwich with those three? I mean, they could go corner, but I do think it's either corner or edge here for the Raiders with all the clear-cut top QBs off the board in Williams, Daniels, May, Penix Jr., McCarthy, and Nix off the board. I do think this, as I've said before, and I've been mistaken, I do think this will be the first defensive pick of the draft.
Fewest overall picks, 12 for 6 QBs selected in NFL draft history. The team lives and dies by the quarterback. That is evident here with the 2024 NFL draft. 1 through 3 we all expected, and I think JJ McCarthy to the Vikings was a lock, as was Bo Nix. But I don't want to sound like a broken record, but Michael Penix, shocker. We're gonna keep things going with the present now, though, as the Raiders will be making their pick.
In the 2024 NFL Draft, the Las Vegas Raiders select Brock Bowers.
Okay.
All right.
Talent-wise, you mentioned top 5.
Yeah.
Raiders' current tight end, Michael Mayer, who didn't have the flashiest and best season. However, he had a good one. They acquired Harrison Bryant in the offseason. It appears the Raiders favored talent over here. However, the talent is undeniable with the tight end out of Georgia.
Yeah, no, he is a very special player. I did think they were going defense, but why pass up? He fell all the way to 13. I had him going within the top 8 on my board. He top 5. He was top 5 overall in talent. He is truly special, and I do think the Raiders did get value here at this pick. Even though they had other needs, this kid can play ball for sure.
And another thing, like we said, with the quarterbacks of Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell as your quarterback room right now, if you're going to go with one of them as your starter and assuming you don't make any other moves for a quarterback, or unless you decide to go a day 2 quarterback, this is just a value pick to get yourself another weapon for your team. Again, with Jacoby Myers, with Devontae Adams, and now with Brock Bowers, you've got a pretty good receiving core and a tight end that can get you yards and that can, I don't want to say will compete with a team like the Chiefs, but has a good chance to potentially solidify themselves in that number 2 spot in the AFC West and potentially compete for a wild card if they can put it all together.
Saints on the clock next. I honestly would not be surprised if they fielded trade offers here. You have Derek Carr at the helm. Alvin Kamara in the running back has had a troubled on and off the field recently. Michael Thomas is a free agent. You have been active in free agency, however, no really eye-popping names except for Chase Young and Willie Gay. On the defensive end, feels like the Saints are one of those teams which always hovers right around 500, then it gets above 500, but never really gets establishes themselves as a prominent and dominant team in the NFL. Mike, what are you expecting here from the Saints? Do they trade? Do they keep? Do they do something that none of us are going to expect?
I think realistically they could go a receiver here. I could easily also see them trade back again. The Saints, I think, are in that like a limbo position where they got Derek Carr. They have some weapons, but you wonder, are they going to go defense? Maybe do they say, you know what? We got Alvin Kamara. We got some of our younger receivers down in New Orleans and say, you know what? Let's go for the fact that a guy like a Dallas Turner or no defensive player being taken. It's shocking. And doing my research, this is the first time since I believe it was 2021. Yeah, 2021. The latest pick for a defensive player to be selected in the first round was back in 2021 with J.C. Horn, and the Panthers picked at number 8. We're at pick 14, and we haven't seen anything. No defensive player. So could the Saints potentially take one of the cornerbacks, considering they haven't been touched, and there's some good corners available?
Yeah, no, you mentioned the cornerback class, and it's certainly talented. Terrion Arnold, cornerback out of Alabama. Quinyon Mitchell, cornerback out of Toledo. Kool-Aid McKinstry, cornerback out of Alabama. This is definitely the longest, definitely I'd say in NFL history. The Saints still have not made their pick to see if they will take a trade here to trade down or another turn of events. But with the Saints, that their team is heavily reliant on their defense, and they have been one of the better defenses in recent memory with the likes of Demario Davis, Marshawn Lattimore, Tyrann Mathieu, and Cam Jordan. Well, I don't even know if it's still there anymore. I don't see him on the depth chart, which is interesting. I'm on Our Lads, so I'm not sure. Unless
on the Saints website, he is ranked. He is their number 1 left defensive.
Okay, so that's on my end. Then I apologize.
Saints could also go
for that.
Here at 14. That could be a possibility. If not, if they don't trade back.
Well, let's see. They are thin at wide receiver. Chris Olave, Raheed Shaheed. Shaheed is more known as a special teams guy. Wasn't all pro in special teams last year. Acquired Cedric Wilson Jr., Equanimous St. Brown. Wide receivers still on the board include Adonai Mitchell, Texas. Brian Thomas Jr., wide receiver out of LSU. I know you knocked me for saying this, but Xavier Worthy, wide receiver out of Texas, who broke NFL history with a 4.21 40-yard run at the combine. So we don't know what the Saints are going to do. Saints may trade their pick even. This is the part of the draft where we're in the unknown, and we have to call it like we see it, kind of like improv. So we're definitely going to be surprised, but based off everything that's happened so far, biggest takeaway from the draft so far?
I say the biggest takeaway from the draft is the Michael Penix pickup. I mean, it all, like we said earlier, it brings up the biggest question of what is wrong. Is something wrong with Kirk Cousins? Is that ankle or is that Achilles not going to be ready for week 1? And you say we'd rather have Michael Penix, who just came out of the national championship, and put him in week 1 rather than have Taylor Heineke in. And obviously, like we've said before, that this is a changing of the guard. So it seems like when Kirk Cousins' contract is done, he's done, and Penix will inherit the system, but as a very much in his late 20s. So to me, that's been the biggest takeaway from this draft.
Yeah, other than Penix being drafted to the Falcons, I think Bowers falling to 13 is pretty big. For the Raiders organization, he definitely fits the bill for them. Truly a special talent, especially at a tight end. You don't get an explosive guy like that from tight end often. Previous one being Pitts, drafted 5th or 4th overall in recent years. he is a special talent. I can't wait to see him play. But as the Saints pick is in now, we did have a new record, 6 quarterbacks selected in the top 12, which is pretty special here. And it's definitely been fun to watch and been a crazy ride.
The Saints pick is in. They will stay put at number 14. Don't know what's going to happen. Looking ahead, though, Indianapolis will have pick number 15, and the Seahawks will have pick number 16. According to my mock draft here on my computer, the Saints had Fashanu at 14 going to the Saints. However, the Jets snagged him. So don't know what's going to happen. They do have a deficiency at offensive tackle, I think, though. Cesar Ruiz, he's a guard. Trevor Penning, left tackle. Ryan Ramczyk, who you drafted in the first round a couple years back, has been solid, however, not all-pro material as the pick is in and Goodell is approaching. Okay. Good pick there. I believe that is going to be, let me 1 second, Talise Fuaga, who I think a lot of people consider as the second best offensive tackle besides Joe Alt in this draft. The Saints definitely need an offensive lineman, and it feels like they got him here.
Yeah, looking at some of his notes that I'm seeing, it looks like he can kind of switch between that tackle guard spot. So kind of a good pickup, pretty good length and good foot speed, and has good offensive lineman IQ, and is elite and has elite strength. And does bring a powerful mentality to any team. So I think it's a really good pickup. And New Orleans now has a guy who they can move around on that offensive line potentially to help that offensive line out and help Derek Carr in protecting them.
Not sure how much longer we're going to stay here on WVOF Sports. And once again, we'd like to thank you for listening to our special coverage of the NFL draft live stream. Certainly some surprises. Some teams have changed for the better. Some teams have definitely changed. Colin.
Yeah, like I said, before, I'm playing a little bit. If I didn't see the Saints trading back there, I could totally see them going lineman. But here at 15, I do think this could definitely be a defensive pick here for the Colts with needs at cornerback, edge, and safety. They could definitely go with defensive help here in Indianapolis.
Now we're approaching teams that are kind of on the verge, you feel like, of taking that next step. Colts being one of them and a perfect example. Anthony Richardson showed great flashes before getting injured. However, the Colts were still well alive for a playoff berth before that loss to the Houston Texans in Week 18. But looking at the next picks, we have Indianapolis, Seattle, Jacksonville, and then Cincinnati to follow. All teams who finished 9-8 just missed the playoffs. Bengals, we expect them to be back, obviously with a full, healthy Joe Burrow and the weapons around him. Jacksonville had a poor collapse after starting the season 8-3, and yet missing the playoffs, blowing the division to the Texans. Seattle, I was curious about because they were linked to Michael Penix a lot. However, it appears Geno Smith, they are going to why am I blanking on words here? They're going to run on Geno Smith here, given that the quarterbacks have fizzled out.
Kind of looking at Indianapolis, seems like their biggest needs, wide receiver and defensive backs and no cornerbacks really taken. So if you're Indianapolis right here and you're saying to yourself, we want to go get a corner, you've got the cream of the crop, and all the cornerbacks available that you want to pick between. Cooper DeJean, Aquinian Mitchell, Terrion Arnold, King Street potential, or even a Nate Wiggins from Clemson, all still available in the cornerback room.
Cornerbacks of the Colts right now include Juju Brents, Dallas Flowers, and also Kenny Moore. So definitely could use a guy like Arnold or DeJean here. Dallas Turner, who was projected in the mock draft to 8, still waiting for a pick in what has been an entirely offensive draft thus far, all the way up to pick 15. Wow. Or at least through 14.
Tell you this though, this guy can cover any type of receiver that you want. Small guys, tall guys, inside, outside. And think about this, Gus Bradley loves those long rangy.
Just even talk about Indianapolis a little bit. This morning I saw some reports saying that they were potentially in the mix to go jump up higher in the draft to go get a receiver, but now they are sitting at 15 and they've got, I think, a big question to answer of do they want to build more depth at their receiver, give Michael Pittman Jr. another guy to be around, to give the Colts quarterback a good chance to have another receiver, another option available. We will see the Colts pick now in, and we will see what happens.
Colts are staying put at number 15. So much for the trade talks, as we've only had one trade in the draft thus far, as it was one pick, which was very significant. Colts Goodell is coming up.
With the 15th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Indianapolis Colts select Latu.
Okay. First defensive player off the board in Latu out of UCLA. The streak is over. The streak ends at 14 consecutive offensive players picked. That is, Colts get an edge rusher to accompany DeForest Buckner. You expected cornerback, but we got a defensive end with Seattle on the clock, who is a plethora of young secondary members.
Indeed, and I mean, looking at the Colts, you wonder maybe do they think that a lot of these top corners may be available in day 2, or maybe do they see themselves trying to trade back into the first round, later in the first round potentially? Kind of looking at Seattle again, they are, again, potentially another team that could look to develop some positions, build some depth on some positions, looking at some of their positions of need, looking like a lot on that defensive line, the linebackers, and potentially the interior line. And with a guy like Dallas Turner, looking at sites like PFF, he's ranked 16th right now on PFF. And right now at 16, this Dallas Turner could easily be gone here, the edge defender from Alabama.
Seahawks certainly have been active in the draft in terms of secondary, as I alluded to earlier, drafting guys like Devin Witherspoon, who honestly, in my opinion, should have won Defensive Rookie of the Year, although didn't. Guys like Tariq Woolen, Kobe Bryant. There's a lot of guys here in the secondary, and linebackers, you do have solid ones in Jerome Baker and Darrell Taylor. However, it feels like you need to rush the quarterback. We thought the Falcons were going to do that, and I think they should have, but they did not. Nonetheless, Dallas Bryant would be an ideal pick here for the Seahawks. I feel like that type of name goes with the Seahawks. I already see it like the jersey.
Yeah, going back to the pick from the Colts here in Latu, I originally had him as the first defensive player going to Atlanta, but that was obviously upended by Michael Penix Jr. As I stated earlier, Latu out of UCLA, and last year he did have 13 sacks, and the year before that he did have 10.5. So you're definitely getting some firepower out of Latu here off the edge, and the Colts, they did as the first defensive pick of the draft at 15. I do think they got some good value here in Latu.
Seahawks have about 5 minutes left. This will be the last pick WVOF will be covering. I want to thank all of you again for listening to WVOF's coverage of the NFL 2024 NFL draft. Certainly surprises. Some we expected, some we didn't. Overall, pretty eventful, though, and I'm excited to see how these young guns make an impact on their teams immediately. As you look at guys like Caleb Williams and guys like Jan Daniels looking to make noise early, be that CJ Stroud, go from that worst to first immediately, because it feels like there's always that one team who goes from worst to first. And I was thinking the Jets finished last in the division, but they did not because of the Patriots, whoever, a couple years ago. When they did, they went out and they did the money. They spent money. They got Aaron Rodgers. They got other guys. That's what a big market does. Nonetheless, it's been fun here at WVOF on this Thursday night, just approaching 10 o'clock here now, as the pick will be in sooner rather than later.
Kind of just before we even end, looking ahead just to the rest of this first round, it's going to be intriguing to see some players that have fallen this far, especially in that cornerback room. A lot of the cornerbacks seen as potential top picks, top 12 picks potentially. I'm very intrigued to see for the back half of the second round who's going to get in and who's going to be a day 2 pick. And for teams at the top end of that day 2, they may have a lot of decisions to make.
There is a plethora of defensive talent still on the board, and it feels like as Seattle's pick is coming in, the rich might get richer. It's been one team that comes to mind when I think of rich getting richer is the Baltimore Ravens, who have had great draft classes. I remember when they drafted Patrick Queen, who's on the Steelers now, ironically. Remember when they drafted J.K. Dobbins. So it'll be interesting to see how the term rebuild or reload rather than rebuild has been thrown out a lot, and you see a lot of teams do that across all professional sports, who's a team that you have your eye on? Who is a contender right now to see how they capitalize?
I mean, I'm gonna go with the obvious pick, and that'd be the Kansas City Chiefs. Coming off a Super Bowl and doing it in such a way where you didn't have so many like big name weapons. And I'm really intrigued to see what they do at 32, whether or not they keep 32. But a lot of noise, especially since the draft combine, of a potential Xavier Worthy running the fastest 40 time in NFL draft combine history. Does he get picked up? And does that add to the idea of a team that is built with speed and giving Patrick Mahomes another deep threat option? That's one team I'm really intrigued to see and what they do to end the first night of the NFL draft.
Yeah, I am obviously curious to see what the Chiefs do, but the Ravens, they did lose a good amount of players, and I am curious to see. They did acquire Derrick Henry and a tackle in Josh Jones, but they did lose, as Andrew stated, they drafted Patrick Queen. He's now gone. They lost safety Geno Stone, offensive guard John Simpson to the Jets. Ronald Darby's gone. Devin Duvernay, who they've had for a long time, is gone. Gus the Bus is gone. Morgan Moses also to the Jets. And another guard in Kevin Zietler is gone. So the Ravens with pick 30, I'm curious to see what they do. Maybe they also trade back into the first round and be aggressive here. There's still some tackles on the board that are good, and I do believe I'm very curious to see what the Ravens do.
Yeah, a 5% chance Dallas Turner, who is widely regarded as the best defensive player in this draft, that will be available at the 16th pick. Trying to figure out why offense is dominant. I know offense is kind of what gets the views, what gets the attention, and offense is just as pivotal. And maybe if not more important, you can get into that debate of would you rather have a perfect offense or a perfect defense? But why do you think before the Seahawks picks and really quickly why teams have prioritized offense?
I'm going to say, I think for a lot of these positions, you look at some of the top talent, it was a very top-heavy talent in a lot of these positions, in the quarterbacks, in the receivers, in the tackles. So I think a lot of teams prioritize making sure that if the talent was available, that they go and get it. I think probably, if not tonight, definitely tomorrow, you're going to probably see a much more heavy defensive second round, if not a lot of defensive players are taking the rest of this round. You may see some of these like receivers like Adonai Mitchell, like a Brian Thomas, like a Keon Coleman from Florida State, who could potentially get in at the back end of this first round or easily are going to get in early in that second round. But I still think looking at the rest of this night, it's either going to be a heavy defensive back end of the draft or it's going to be a heavy second round tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, that about sums it up. Mike gave perfect analysis right there. I mean, as we've seen, it's just been an offensive overload. A new record in the draft and with offensive players and QBs. As the pick is now in for the Seahawks, they are honoring the Osan Air Base in South Korea.
To defend the freedom of 51 million people.
This is Blitz for Operation Draft Day.
Paul is here at Osan. Back to you in Detroit.
Looks great there. Record attendance, new record attendance at the draft with 275,000 people.
That's a number. Jeez.
Detroit came out and showed up tonight.
Over 50,000 more than the previous record.
Thank you to our men and women who serve.
Lions haven't even picked yet.
It's going to be an interesting sight to see that Lions crowd roaring when they get their pick.
Probably rolling pick 29.
With the 16th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Seattle Seahawks select Byron Murphy,
Okay, Byron Murphy was a top defensive player in this draft class. Certainly, Seahawks needed a defensive rusher and that presence. So, good job by them, I think, in my opinion, capitalizing on the lack of defensive picks with your offensive core kind of solidified a little bit in terms of wide receiver and quarterback. Good job there by Seattle taking a premier defensive talent.
Yeah, Byron Murphy, great defensive lineman. He's got a lot of strength and a lot of speed, a versatile three-down back in reports. And again, to just add to the defense, a defense that wants to get better, that's a young defense, but that's a hungry defense. And it's a very, very good pick in my opinion.
I'm just curious about this next one because Jacksonville just traded their pick to Minnesota. So I'm just interested to see what they took Minnesota trying to do. Their pick is in very quickly, so they've been very adamant, and it appears they know who they want. Do they go with a defensive presence here? I know they just lost Danielle Hunter. It feels like not Bryant, but Dallas Turner is ripe for the picking.
To me, I mean, him falling this far and is projected to be easily a top 10 pick. This would seem like the obvious pick, or even
Jefferson.
Or even, some type of defensive lineman, or even potentially trying to build up your cornerback room with none of the cornerbacks cornerback yet to still be taken in the first round. So it will be interesting to see what Minnesota does here.
Well, the pick was in very quickly, so Minnesota seems confident in who they're picking.
So the one defensive pick knocks the defensive dominoes down. Having Latu out of UCLA followed by Byron Murphy, those are both my 1 and 2 on defense. Followed with 14 straight draft picks, followed by 14 straight offensive draft picks, followed by the 2 defensive. Will Minnesota keep the train going here on defense and go another edge? 3 back-to-back edges, back-to-back-to-back.
Looking as Goodell is entering the podium. This trade, you wonder what was also involved in the trade. Most likely, I would suspect that pick 23 was given to Jacksonville.
To the Minnesota Vikings. With the 17th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Minnesota Vikings select Dallas Turner.
Yeah. All right. Minnesota gets their guy, and appears Minnesota up there with Chicago as for the winners in the draft thus far. Appears graphics operator might be having a little bit of a malfunction himself. Dallas Turner to Minnesota, though. Versatility, as you're saying, is on full display here. Offers you great speed, ideal build for someone who sacks a quarterback at a very high rate.
Most people thought he could have been top 10, but get very good value here at 16. Yeah. 17 here for Minnesota and Dallas Turner. Primed out of Bama. He is ready to play ball. And Minnesota, as Andrew said, could be front runners along with the Bears as winners of this year's draft.
And now for the rest of the draft, it's going to be a matter of can you find those diamonds in the rough that a lot of teams passed on that you have not. Thank you for listening to tonight's coverage from WVOF Sports of the 2024 NFL Draft. From Andrew Jameson, Big Mike, Michael Kelleher, and Colin Lynch, we thank you for listening. Take care. Actually, before one thing, grade the Pats draft.
I'm going to give the Pats draft of Drake May A+. Again, a lot of potential, a lot of comparison to Josh Allen, and if you can use him correctly, he can be a generational quarterback.
Grade the Jets pick.
I'm I'll give it a B plus. Joe Douglas, I do trust him as the GM. Loves to build through the trenches, and rightfully so. Within the past years, we did get a third and a fourth rounder. And if there's one thing Joe Douglas likes to do, he finds athletes there, and he will find players that will be suited up on Sunday for the Jets and ready to go.
Winner of the drafts that we covered.
Definitely. I mean, it's got to be the Bears and the Vikings. They both have the 2 picks, but sneaky. I do like the Raiders getting Bowers at 13. Very great value there. But other than those 3, it's up for grabs.
I would probably say Chicago. I mean, you got your quarterback that you wanted, and the fact that you add another receiver to give Caleb Williams another weapon is so important in this league, as it's now been becoming an offensive league.
I'm going to argue the Giants getting Malik Neighbors. However, I'm going to go with the Bears as my firm winner. Thank you so much once again for listening to WVOF's sports coverage of the 2024 NFL Draft from Andrew Jameson, Michael Kelleher, and Colin Lynch. Take care.